You have been living in a prison your entire life, but the bars are invisible. They are made of words, of beliefs, of social contracts you never agreed to but obey anyway. You think you are free because you can choose what to eat for breakfast, where to work, who to love. But these are not real choices. These are selections from a menu someone else wrote. True freedom, the kind that Machiavelli understood, the kind that the architects of empires possess, begins with a single realization. Everything you were taught about how to be a good person was designed to make you controllable. Today, we are going to dismantle the programming. We are going to examine the invisible chains that were placed on you before you could even speak, before you could resist, when you were soft and malleable and trusting. This is not a discussion about morality. This is an autopsy of the psychological mechanisms that turned you into a servant of systems you do not even recognize as systems. And once you see the machinery, once you understand how you were programmed to submit, to accommodate, to shrink yourself for the comfort of others, you will face a choice. You can close this video and return to sleep. Pretend you never saw what I am about to show you. Or you can stay and accept that the person you thought you were is a fiction, a character written by people who needed you to play a role that served their interests, not yours. Most of you will leave. The truth is heavy, and you have been taught to avoid heaviness, to seek comfort, to surround yourself with pleasant lies that make you feel safe. But safety is a cage. Comfort is anesthesia. And the people who offered you these things were not protecting you. They were domesticating you, turning you from a wild animal capable of surviving in any environment into a pet that panics when left alone, that cannot feed itself, that waits by the door for a master to return and tell it what to do. Machiavelli wrote for princes, for men who would rule kingdoms and command armies. But his deepest insights were not about political strategy. They were about human nature, about the fundamental reality that most people are governed by fear and conditioning, not by reason or free will. He understood that the masses do not want freedom. They want the illusion of freedom wrapped in the security of structure. They want to believe they are making choices while following a script written by someone else. This is not cruelty. This is observation. And if you want to rise above the masses, if you want to operate at a level where you create reality rather than react to it, you must first understand how thoroughly you have been shaped by forces you never questioned. Let us begin with childhood, because that is where the programming starts. Before you could form conscious thoughts, before you had language to name what was happening to you, you were being trained. Every smile from a parent when you obeyed, every frown when you resisted, every time you were told to share when you did not want to be quiet when you wanted to speak, to apologize when you were not sorry, you were learning the fundamental lesson of civilized life. Your needs are less important than social harmony. Your authentic self is unacceptable. You must perform a version of yourself that makes others comfortable. Think about the phrases that were repeated to you thousands of times during your formative years. Be good, be nice, share with others, do not be selfish, do not show off, do not make a scene. What is the message underneath these instructions? It is not about kindness or consideration. It is about suppression. It is about learning to override your instincts, your desires, your sense of self-preservation in favor of group cohesion. You were taught that wanting things for yourself is bad, that standing out is dangerous, that expressing your true feelings will result in punishment or abandonment. This is social conditioning, and it is necessary for creating a functional society. Without it, we would have chaos, violence, everyone acting purely on impulse with no regard for others. The problem is not that you were socialized. The problem is that you were over-socialized, trained so thoroughly to prioritize others that you lost access to your own inner authority, your own sense of what you want and need and deserve. By the time you reached adolescence, the conditioning was complete. You had internalized the rules so deeply that you no longer needed external enforcement. You became your own jailer, policing your thoughts and behaviors to ensure they remained within acceptable boundaries. You learned to feel guilt when you violated the invisible rules, shame when you fell short of the impossible standards, anxiety when you considered stepping outside the prescribed path. And all of this, every mechanism of self-suppression, was presented to you as virtue. You were a good child if you obeyed. You were a good student if you followed instructions without questioning. You were a good employee if you showed up on time and did what you were told. You were a good partner if you sacrificed your needs for the relationship. The word good became synonymous with compliant, with manageable, with safe to be around because you would not cause problems or make demands or challenge the existing order. Now you are an adult, technically free to make your own choices, and yet you find yourself paralyzed by invisible constraints. You want to start a business, but you hear voices in your head telling you it is too risky, too selfish, too arrogant to think you could succeed. You want to end a relationship that drains you, but you feel overwhelming guilt at the thought of hurting someone or being seen as the bad person. You want to speak up when someone disrespects you, but you freeze, smile, laugh it off, because confrontation feels impossible, terrifying, wrong. These are not your authentic reactions. These are programmed responses, defense mechanisms installed in you decades ago by people who needed you to be easy to manage. Your parents needed you to be obedient so they could function without the chaos of a wild child. Your teachers needed you to sit still and absorb information so they could process 30 students at once. Your employers need you to be productive and uncomplaining so they can extract maximum value from your labor. Your romantic partners need you to be accommodating so they do not have to confront their own selfishness or insecurity. Everyone in your life has benefited from your conditioning, from your tendency to make yourself smaller, quieter, less demanding. And you participated in your own domestication because you were promised something in return. You were promised that if you were good, if you followed the rules, if you sacrificed enough, you would be rewarded. You would be loved, accepted, successful, happy. This was the contract. But here is what they did not tell you. The contract is a lie. You can be good for your entire life, follow every rule, sacrifice everything you want for what others need, and you will not be rewarded. You will be used. You will be taken for granted. The people who extract value from your compliance will not thank you for it because they have come to expect it, to see it as your natural state rather than as a gift you are giving them. And when you finally break, when you try to assert a boundary or express a need or ask for something in return, they will be shocked, offended, hurt. They will accuse you of changing, of becoming selfish, of betraying the person they thought you were. What they mean is that you have stopped playing the role they assigned you, the role of the accommodating one, the reliable one, the one who never makes waves. Your programming runs deep, deeper than you consciously understand. It operates in the background of every interaction, every decision, every moment of your life. It is the reason you say sorry when someone bumps into you. It is the reason you laugh at jokes you do not find funny. It is the reason you agree to things you do not want to do. It is the reason you stay silent when you should speak, and speak when you should stay silent. You are operating on autopilot, running scripts written by people who are long dead or no longer in your life. People whose approval you are still seeking, even though seeking their approval never actually got you what you wanted. Machiavelli understood that most people live this way, trapped in the gap between what they want and what they allow themselves to pursue. He wrote that men are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities that he who seeks to deceive will always find someone who will allow himself to be deceived. You are that someone. You deceive yourself every day, telling yourself that your limitations are external when they are internal, that your lack of power is about circumstances when it is about choices, that you are a victim of a system when you are a volunteer participant in your own subjugation. The first step toward freedom is not action. It is recognition. You must see the chains before you can break them. And the chains are made of language, of beliefs, of emotional patterns that were installed before you had the cognitive capacity to consent to them. Let me show you how this works in practice. You have been taught that emotions are reactions to external events, that you feel a certain way because something happened to you. Someone insults you and you feel angry. Someone rejects you and you feel sad. Someone succeeds where you failed and you feel envious. This seems obvious, natural, inevitable, but it is not true. Emotions are not caused by events. Emotions are caused by your interpretation of events, by the meaning you assign to what happens. And the meanings you assign were taught to you, programmed into you through years of conditioning. When someone insults you, you feel angry not because the insult itself has inherent power, but because you were taught that insults are attacks on your worth, that you must defend your honor, that allowing disrespect to go unchallenged makes you weak. These are learned associations. A person raised in a different culture with different values might feel pity for the insulter, recognizing the insult as evidence of the other person's insecurity or lack of sophistication. Or they might feel nothing at all, seeing the words as meaningless sounds with no connection to their actual value as a person. Your emotional reactions, the ones that feel automatic and unchosen, are actually the result of years of training in how to interpret social situations. You were taught what to care about, what to fear, what to pursue. You were taught that approval from authority figures matters, that fitting in with your peer group matters, that external markers of success like money and status and recognition matter. None of these things matter inherently. They matter because you were conditioned to believe they matter, and that belief shapes your entire experience of reality. This is why you feel anxiety before a job interview, why you feel shame when you make a social mistake, why you feel inadequate when you compare yourself to others. Not because these situations are objectively threatening, but because you have internalized a set of rules about what these situations mean about your worth, your competence, your place in the hierarchy. And here is the dark truth that Machiavelli understood but most people refuse to accept. The people who taught you these rules, who conditioned you to care about the things they needed you to care about, were not trying to help you. They were trying to control you. Your parents taught you to obey because disobedient children are difficult to manage. Your teachers taught you to seek their approval because students who need teacher validation are easier to educate than students who trust their own judgment. Your employers taught you to measure your worth by your productivity because employees who derive self-esteem from work output are more exploitable than employees who have strong boundaries and outside sources of meaning. Your romantic partners taught you that love means sacrifice because partners who sacrifice without reciprocity are more convenient than partners who demand equity. None of this was done with malicious intent. Most of the people who programmed you were themselves programmed, running the same scripts that were installed in them, perpetuating patterns they never questioned. But intent is irrelevant. The effect is the same. You were shaped into a form that serves others, not yourself. You were taught to be good in ways that make you useful, not happy. You were given a map of reality that keeps you running in circles, chasing goals that do not actually lead to fulfillment, avoiding dangers that are not actually dangerous, seeking approval from people whose approval does not actually improve your life. The question you must ask yourself now is whether you are willing to question the map, whether you are willing to examine the beliefs you have never examined, the rules you have always followed, the fears that have always controlled you. This is uncomfortable work because it requires you to consider the possibility that everything you thought was true about how to be a good person, how to be successful, how to be happy, might be propaganda designed to make you compliant rather than wisdom designed to make you free. Let me give you a specific example of how this programming operates. You have been taught that honesty is a virtue, that you should tell the truth, that lying is morally wrong. This seems like a straightforward ethical principle, but examine it more closely. Who benefits when you are always honest? When you tell your boss what you really think about their decision, you make yourself vulnerable to retaliation. When you tell your partner every doubt and fear you have, you create instability in the relationship. When you tell your competitors your strategy, you lose your advantage. Total honesty is not a virtue. It is a handicap. It is a way of disarming yourself in a world full of people who do not play by the same rules. The sophisticated operator understands that honesty is a tool, not a commandment. Sometimes honesty builds trust and deepens connection. Sometimes honesty is strategic suicide. The ability to discern which situation you are in and to adjust your level of transparency accordingly is a form of intelligence that you were actively discouraged from developing. You were taught to be honest always, in all contexts, with all people, because this makes you predictable. It makes you easy to manipulate. If people know you will always tell the truth, they can extract information from you by simply asking questions. They can predict your reactions. They can plan around you. But if you are selectively honest, if you understand that some truths serve your interests and some truths undermine them, if you recognize that you do not owe everyone access to your inner world, then you become opaque, mysterious, difficult to control. This is what Machiavelli meant when he advised the prince to appear one way while being another, to cultivate a public persona that serves strategic purposes while keeping the private self hidden and protected. You were taught the opposite. You were taught that having a private self separate from your public presentation is hypocrisy, that authenticity means revealing everything, that holding back is dishonest. This teaching serves those who want to control you because a person with no secrets, no private thoughts, no protected inner world is a person with no defense. Consider how this plays out in modern life. You are encouraged to share everything on social media, to document your experiences, to broadcast your thoughts and feelings and opinions to an audience of strangers and acquaintances. You are told this is authentic, that it is healthy self-expression, that it builds community and connection. What it actually does is create a permanent record of your weaknesses, your biases, your mistakes, your evolution. It gives everyone who observes you a complete map of your psychology. They can see what triggers you, what you care about, what you are insecure about, what you are proud of. They can use this information to influence you, to sell to you, to manipulate you, to hurt you if they choose. And you volunteer this information freely because you were taught that privacy is suspicious, that people with nothing to hide should hide nothing, that transparency is virtuous. The powerful operate differently. They cultivate carefully controlled public images while keeping their true thoughts, their real strategies, their actual vulnerabilities completely private. They understand that information is currency, and giving it away for free is financially and strategically foolish. They have been taught the opposite lesson, or they taught themselves through trial and error, that mystery creates power, that what people do not know about you cannot be used against you, that the appearance of openness can coexist with the reality of careful information control. You were not taught this because you were not meant to be powerful. You were meant to be manageable. Let us examine another piece of programming that runs deep in most people. You have been taught that conflict is bad, that disagreement is uncomfortable and should be avoided, that the goal of human interaction is harmony and consensus. This belief makes you weak. It makes you unable to defend your interests when they come into conflict with someone else's interests. It makes you a people pleaser, someone who sacrifices their own needs and preferences to avoid the discomfort of confrontation. Think about how this plays out. Your boss assigns you extra work without extra compensation. You feel resentful, but you say nothing because objecting would create conflict. Your friend makes plans that do not work for you, but you go along with them anyway because suggesting an alternative might seem difficult or demanding. Your romantic partner crosses a boundary, but you do not enforce it because having that conversation feels too hard, too scary, too likely to damage the relationship. In each of these situations, you are choosing short-term harmony over long-term respect. You are teaching people that they can impose on you without consequence, that your needs are negotiable while theirs are fixed, that you will bear discomfort to avoid making them uncomfortable. This pattern, repeated over years, creates relationships where you are fundamentally subordinate. You become the one who adjusts, who compromises, who sacrifices. Not because you are naturally generous or accommodating, but because you were programmed to fear conflict more than you fear your own diminishment. Machiavelli understood that conflict is not an aberration to be avoided, but a fundamental feature of human interaction. Resources are limited. Interests diverge. People want incompatible things. Conflict is inevitable. The question is not whether you will experience conflict, but whether you will engage in it consciously and strategically, or whether you will avoid it until the accumulated resentment and unmet needs destroy you from the inside. The person who has been deprogrammed, who has broken free from the conditioning that makes them easy to control, understands that conflict is a tool. Sometimes creating conflict is necessary to establish boundaries, to test someone's commitment, to force a resolution that has been delayed too long. Sometimes embracing conflict rather than avoiding it is the fastest path to clarity and respect. But you were not taught to think this way. You were taught that conflict means something has gone wrong, that it is evidence of failure, that good people do not create problems for others. This teaching keeps you docile. It keeps you in relationships and jobs and situations that do not serve you because leaving or changing them would require you to disappoint someone, to violate their expectations, to create the conflict you have been trained to avoid at all costs. The cost, of course, is yourself, your happiness, your potential, your life. Now. Potential, your life. Now. Let me show you the mechanism by which this programming is maintained and reinforced even in adulthood, even after you are theoretically free from the direct control of parents and teachers and authority figures. The mechanism is shame. Shame is the emotion you feel when you violate the internalized rules, when you step outside the boundaries of acceptable behavior as defined by your conditioning. It is different from guilt. Guilt is what you feel when you do something you believe is wrong. Shame is what you feel when you do something that makes you believe you are wrong, that there is something fundamentally defective or unacceptable about who you are. Shame is the weapon used to keep you in line. When you consider asserting yourself, speaking up, setting a boundary, pursuing what you want without apologizing for it, you feel a surge of shame. You hear voices in your head telling you that you are being selfish, arrogant, difficult, too much. These voices are not your authentic self. They are the internalized voices of everyone who ever benefited from your compliance, everyone who needed you to stay small so they could stay comfortable. The sophisticated operator recognizes shame for what it is, a control mechanism, and learns to observe it without obeying it. When the shame arises, when the voice says you are being selfish for wanting something, the deprogrammed person asks a different question. Is this actually selfish, meaning harmful to others without benefit to me? Or is this simply prioritizing my needs in a way that others are not accustomed to? When the shame says you are being difficult, the deprogrammed person asks whether difficult means wrong or whether it simply means inconvenient for someone who expected you to be easy. The deprogrammed person understands that most accusations of selfishness are actually attempts to manipulate you back into a subservient role. The person calling you selfish is usually someone who has been benefiting from your selflessness, someone who wants you to continue sacrificing for their comfort. They frame your self-interest as a moral failing because they know that you have been conditioned to respond to moral language, to feel shame when accused of violating social norms. But Machiavelli teaches us to look at incentives, not at moral claims. When someone accuses you of being selfish, ask yourself what they gain if you accept that accusation and change your behavior. Usually, they gain your continued service, your continued sacrifice, your continued subordination. The accusation is not about ethics. It is about control. This is a difficult truth to accept because it means recognizing that many of the people in your life, including people you love, including people who claim to love you, are participating in your oppression. Not out of malice, usually, but out of self-interest. They have grown accustomed to the version of you that serves their needs. They do not want you to change because your change threatens the comfortable dynamic where you give more than you receive. When you begin to deprogram yourself, when you start setting boundaries and prioritizing your own needs and refusing to play the role of the accommodating one, you will encounter resistance. The resistance will come wrapped in concern, in disappointment, in moral judgments about who you are becoming. You have changed. You are not the person I thought you were. You used to be so kind and now you are cold. These statements are designed to shame you back into compliance. They are designed to make you feel that your growth, your self-assertion, your refusal to continue sacrificing is evidence of moral decay rather than evidence of healthy boundary setting. The person who wants to maintain power over you will always frame your liberation as your corruption. Let me give you a framework for understanding the different levels of psychological development, a map that shows you where you are and where you could go if you are willing to do the difficult work of deprogramming. At the lowest level, you are completely identified with your conditioning. You are a sleeper. You do not question the rules. You do not examine your beliefs. You do not wonder whether the life you are living is the life you would choose if you had truly understood that you had a choice. You move through the world reacting to stimuli, following scripts, seeking the approval of authority figures, measuring your worth by external standards you never agreed to. Most people die at this level, never having woken up to the fact that they were asleep. At the second level, you become aware that you are playing a role. You realize that much of your behavior is performative, designed to elicit certain responses from others. You are a mimic. You have learned that intelligence and success and social status can be acquired by imitating the people who already have these things. You read the books they recommend. You use the language they use. You adopt their mannerisms and opinions. You are no longer asleep, but you are not yet thinking for yourself. You are borrowing someone else's thoughts, someone else's identity, trying them on to see if they fit or if they at least make you look like they fit. This level is necessary. You cannot develop original thought without first learning from those who came before you. But many people get stuck here, becoming permanent students, permanent imitators, always looking outside themselves for the next framework to adopt, the next guru to follow, the next system to implement. They mistake consumption of information for development of wisdom. At the third level, you become strategic. You are the calculator. You recognize that social interaction is a game with rules that can be learned and exploited. You understand incentive structures. You see what people want and you figure out how to give it to them in exchange for what you want. You become transactional, effective, capable of navigating complex social and professional hierarchies. You are no longer naive. You no longer believe that the world is fair or that good people are automatically rewarded. You have accepted that power matters, that perception matters, that who you know and how you position yourself often matters more than your actual competence or character. This level produces successful people by conventional metrics. Lawyers, executives, politicians, entrepreneurs who understand how to play the game better than their competitors. But it is an exhausting level to inhabit because it requires constant vigilance, constant calculation, constant awareness of threats and opportunities. You cannot relax. You cannot trust. Everyone is a potential ally or enemy, and the distinction can shift based on changing circumstances. At the fourth level, you develop the capacity to lead. You are the operator. You are no longer just navigating the game. You are actively trying to win it, to reshape it, to impose your will on reality. You have vision, discipline, the ability to endure discomfort in pursuit of long-term goals. You can make difficult decisions that others avoid. You can carry the weight of responsibility that others flee from. People follow you not because you manipulate them, but because you represent order, purpose, direction in a chaotic world. This is the level of high achievers, of people who build companies, lead movements, create tangible change in the world. But it is also a lonely level because leadership isolates you. You cannot show weakness. You cannot share your doubts. You must be the lighthouse, and lighthouses stand alone. At the fifth level, you learn to operate through others. You are the puppeteer. You realize that direct control is inefficient, that it creates resistance and resentment. You learn instead to create conditions where people choose to do what you want them to do, where they feel autonomous even as they advance your agenda. You master influence, persuasion, the subtle manipulation of environments and incentives. You become invisible, operating through intermediaries, through systems, through carefully constructed narratives that shape how people interpret reality. This is the level of true power, power that does not announce itself, power that cannot be easily traced or resisted because it operates beneath conscious awareness. But it comes with a terrible price. You lose connection to authentic human relationships. You begin to see everyone as a means to an end, as a variable in an equation you are trying to solve. You become isolated not just from others but from yourself, unsure which of your thoughts and feelings are genuine and which are strategic calculations. At the sixth level, you transcend individual manipulation and begin to design systems. You are the architect. You do not waste energy controlling people one by one. You create structures, institutions, ideologies, platforms that shape how millions of people think and behave without any of them realizing they are being shaped. You think in decades and centuries rather than quarters and years. You are playing a different game entirely, a game invisible to those at lower levels. This is the level of the founders of religions, the creators of political systems, the designers of technologies that reshape human consciousness and social organization. They do not control people directly. They control the context in which people make choices, and by controlling context, they control outcomes while maintaining the illusion of individual freedom. But even the architect is attached to his creation. He cares whether the system works, whether it endures, whether history remembers him. This attachment is a vulnerability. At the seventh and final level, you achieve complete detachment. You are the void. You recognize that all systems, all achievements, all identities are ultimately temporary and meaningless. You stop trying to control outcomes and instead align yourself with the fundamental flow of reality, moving with it rather than against it. You can operate at any of the lower levels when necessary, descending to lead when leadership is required, to manipulate when manipulation serves your purpose, to calculate when calculation is useful. But you do not live at those levels. You live in a state of complete internal sovereignty, needing nothing from the external world, attached to no outcome, immune to manipulation because there is nothing anyone can threaten or promise that you value more than your own freedom. This is the state that Machiavelli hinted at when he discussed Fortuna, the recognition that half of life is outside your control, and the wise person accepts this rather than exhausting himself fighting it. This is the Stoic sage, the Taoist master, the person who has transcended the game entirely and can therefore play it perfectly when he chooses to play. Most of you listening to this are somewhere between level 2 and level 4. You are smart enough to know the game exists, but still playing it with the rules you were taught as a child, still seeking validation from people whose approval does not actually improve your life, still making yourself small to avoid conflict, still apologizing for taking up space. The question is whether you are willing to do the work required to climb higher. The work is not about acquiring more information. You already have access to more information than you could process in a lifetime. The work is about removing the psychological blocks that prevent you from acting on what you already know. You already know that you should set boundaries with people who drain you, but you do not do it because you are afraid of their reaction. You already know that you should pursue your actual goals rather than the goals others have projected onto you. But you do not do it because you are afraid of failing or succeeding in ways that separate you from the people you currently know. You already know that you should stop seeking approval from people who do not have your best interests at heart. But you do not do it because the need for approval was installed so deep in your psychology that it feels like a survival need rather than a learned behavior. The deprogramming process requires you to sit with the discomfort of violating your conditioning. It requires you to feel the shame, the guilt, the anxiety that arise when you stop being good in the way you were taught to be good, and to move forward anyway, trusting that the discomfort is temporary but the freedom is permanent. Let me give you a specific practice, a ritual that will begin the process of breaking your conditioning. For the next 7 days, I want you to notice every time you apologize unnecessarily. Not when you have genuinely wronged someone, but when you apologize for existing, for having needs, for taking up space. Every time you say sorry for asking a question, sorry for having an opinion, sorry for inconveniencing someone by your mere presence. I want you to notice it and I want you to replace it. Replace sorry with thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. Replace sorry with a simple statement of fact. I have a question. I see it differently. I need this. Notice how this feels. Notice the anxiety that arises when you do not apologize, when you do not make yourself smaller, when you do not ask permission to exist. That anxiety is your programming screaming at you that you are violating the rules, that you are being bad, that something terrible will happen if you do not immediately return to your submissive posture. Sit with the anxiety. Observe it. Recognize it for what it is, a conditioned response, not an accurate assessment of danger. The terrible thing you fear will not happen. People will not reject you for taking up appropriate space. And if they do, if someone in your life cannot tolerate you setting basic boundaries and expressing basic needs without layers of apologetic framing, then they were never a genuine ally. They were someone who benefited from your subordination and who is now upset that you are refusing to remain subordinate. This is information worth having. This simple practice, repeated consistently, will begin to rewire your nervous system. You will begin to experience yourself as someone with legitimate needs and rights, rather than as someone who must constantly apologize for the inconvenience of their existence. You will begin to stand differently, speak differently, move through the world differently. People will respond to you differently because you are sending different signals. And this is just the beginning. This is the first small crack in the prison wall. Once you have mastered this practice, once you have broken the automatic apologizing pattern, you will be ready for deeper work. You will be ready to examine the other ways you make yourself small, the other patterns of accommodation and people-pleasing and self-sacrifice that you have mistaken for virtue. You will be ready to ask the hardest questions. What do I actually want, independent of what others want from me? What would I do if I was not afraid of disappointing anyone? What boundaries have I failed to set because I was more concerned with being liked than with being respected? These questions do not have easy answers. The answers require you to confront the possibility that you have been living someone else's life, pursuing someone else's definition of success, sacrificing yourself for people who would not sacrifice themselves for you. But confronting these truths is the only path to freedom. Machiavelli teaches us that it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But what he is really teaching is that respect matters more than affection, that being taken seriously matters more than being liked, that maintaining your sovereignty matters more than maintaining your popularity. You have spent your entire life trying to be loved by becoming what others needed you to be. You have made yourself useful, agreeable, accommodating, hoping that your goodness would be recognized and rewarded. It has not been. It will not be, because the people who benefit from your self-sacrifice do not value it. They expect it. They take it for granted. And when you stop providing it, they will not thank you for all the years you gave them what they wanted. They will resent you for finally asking for what you need. This is the brutal truth about human nature that most self-help content will not tell you because it is too dark, too uncomfortable, too likely to make you question the foundational myths about relationships and society that keep you compliant. But you are here because you are ready for the truth, or at least you think you are ready. The truth is that most people in your life do not want you to grow. They want you to stay exactly as you are because your stasis makes them comfortable. Your growth threatens them. It reminds them of their own failure to grow. It disrupts the stable dynamics where they know their role and you know yours. When you change, when you stop being the person they could rely on to always say yes, to always accommodate, to always put their needs before your own, they experience your growth as betrayal. And they will attempt to pull you back down, to shame you back into your old patterns, to convince you that the person you are becoming is worse than the person you were. Do not listen to them. They are not concerned with your well-being. They are concerned with their comfort. And your freedom will always make comfortable people uncomfortable. This is why the path to higher levels of intelligence, the path to genuine power and sovereignty, is necessarily lonely. You will lose friends who were only friends because you made friendship easy for them by never making demands. You will lose romantic partners who loved the version of you that sacrificed everything for the relationship, but cannot love the version of you that has boundaries and needs. You will lose the approval of family members who are invested in you playing the role they assigned you in their psychological drama. All of this is necessary loss. You are shedding dead weight, relationships that were based on your willingness to diminish yourself, connections that required your smallness to function. What you lose in quantity, you will gain in quality. As you rise through the levels, as you become more sovereign and self-contained and strategic, you will attract a different caliber of person. You will attract people who respect strength rather than exploit weakness, people who value authenticity over performance, people who can meet you as equals rather than requiring you to stay subordinate so they can stay superior. But this only happens if you are willing to endure the transition period, the period where you have released the old but not yet found the new, where you are isolated and uncertain and questioning whether you made the right choice. This is the crucible. This is where most people turn back. They cannot tolerate the loneliness, the loss of familiar relationships even if those relationships were toxic, the absence of external validation. They return to their old patterns because the old patterns are at least familiar, predictable, known. Do not be one of these people. If you turn back now, you will be more miserable than you were before you started because you will know what you are sacrificing. You will know that you chose comfort over freedom, that you chose the approval of people who do not actually care about you over the respect of yourself. That knowledge will poison whatever comfort you thought you were preserving. The only way forward is through the discomfort, through the loss, through the uncertainty, through the period where you are learning to validate yourself instead of seeking validation from others, where you are learning to trust your own judgment instead of deferring to authority, where you are learning to tolerate being misunderstood and disliked by people whose understanding and approval you used to crave. On the other side of this transition, you will find something you have never experienced before: true freedom, not the fake freedom of consumer choice, of selecting from a menu of pre-approved options. Real freedom. The freedom to pursue what you actually want without needing anyone's permission. The freedom to set boundaries without guilt. The freedom to prioritize yourself without shame. The freedom to walk away from anything and anyone that does not serve your growth. This freedom is what Machiavelli was writing about when he discussed virtue, the quality of flexible, ruthless, strategic capability that allows a person to shape their own destiny rather than being shaped by circumstances. This freedom is what the Stoics called ataraxia, the state of being undisturbed by external events, because you have built an unshakable internal fortress. This freedom is what every wisdom tradition across history has pointed toward, the recognition that external circumstances have no power over you unless you grant them that power through your attachment and identification. You are not taught to seek this freedom because free people are difficult to control. You are taught to seek comfort, security, approval, belonging, all of which require you to surrender your freedom in exchange for the illusion of safety. But you are starting to see through the illusion. You are starting to recognize that the safety you were promised was a cage, that the belonging required you to amputate parts of yourself that did not fit, that the approval was always conditional and could be withdrawn the moment you stepped out of line. Now you have a choice. You can close this video and pretend you never heard any of this. You can return to your comfortable prison and try to forget that you ever glimpsed the possibility of freedom. Many people will make this choice. They will tell themselves that I am being too extreme, too dark, too cynical. They will return to their self-help books that promise easy transformation and positive thinking and the power of gratitude. They will continue to believe that if they are just good enough, kind enough, giving enough, the universe will reward them. Or you can accept what you now know. You can accept that you have been programmed, that the programming serves others more than it serves you, that breaking free from the programming will be difficult and lonely and uncomfortable but necessary. You can accept that power is real, that hierarchy is real, that most people are operating at low levels of consciousness and will try to keep you at their level because your elevation threatens their worldview. You can accept that you must become strategic, selective, sovereign. If you make the second choice, if you commit to the path of deprogramming and ascension, understand that this is not a course you can take or a book you can read. This is a fundamental reorientation of your entire life. This is choosing to see reality as it is rather than as you were taught to see it. This is choosing to operate by different rules, rules that serve your interests rather than rules designed to make you manageable. I have shown you the prison. I have shown you that the door is unlocked, but I cannot walk through the door for you. That is your choice, your burden, your responsibility. Most of you will not make it. You will read this, feel a moment of recognition, maybe even a moment of inspiration, and then you will return to your patterns. You will apologize unnecessarily tomorrow. You will sacrifice your needs for someone else's comfort next week. You will stay in relationships and jobs and situations that diminish you because leaving requires courage you have not yet developed. But some of you, a very small number, will hear this message and recognize it as the truth you have always known but were afraid to acknowledge. You will begin the work. You will start questioning your conditioning. You will start setting boundaries. You will start prioritizing yourself without guilt. You will endure the loneliness and the loss and the uncertainty because you understand that the alternative is worse, that living someone else's life in exchange for their approval is not living at all. To those few, I say this: you are not chosen. You are not special. You are simply willing to do what most people are too frightened to do. You are willing to see the machinery and refuse to be machinery. You are willing to climb even knowing that each level brings new challenges, new loneliness, new responsibility. The path is long. The path is dark. But the view from the top, the ability to look down and see all the games being played, all the people still trapped in patterns they do not recognize as patterns, all the suffering that comes from living unconsciously, that view makes everything worth it. Not because you will be happy in the conventional sense, but because you will be free. And freedom, true freedom, is worth any price. Now go, begin the work. And when you are ready for what comes next, when you have broken enough of your conditioning to handle deeper truths, you will know where to find me. You will know where to find me.